Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Fighter Heart podcast. Today, we're getting the pleasure of sitting with Erica Harris. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, thank you for having me. Nice to meet you.
Same here. So, if you could, we like to get into it real quick around here. So, if you could give us a little brief rundown about who you are, maybe where you grew up, a little of your upbringing, and then get right into your Fighter Heart story.
Brief rundown. Sure. So I'm a sports chiropractor by trade, very passionate about living a life dedicated to health and wellness. Where did I grow up? In the rugged area of Northern Ontario. Those grounds kind of define me, I would say. I'm very much rooted back home, even though I live here in Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. And yeah, I was 35 years young when my world was pulled out from underneath my feet. I hadn't even complained of feeling sick or unwell. I went in to do a very routine lab test. I actually had my babies in tow. I was still nursing my youngest son at the time. And we had planned a day at the aquarium here in Vancouver. We were heading to the aquarium, and then I packed us up for a picnic at the beach. We were also getting ready for like a month-long family holiday. My older son was about to turn 5 big years old, and we had a kindergarten orientation, like just so many exciting things on the go, life in full swing and in full motion. And I go to do this again, very routine lab. I have both my kids with me at the lab. I leave the lab, I go straight to the aquarium. And I got the call that literally changed it all. I have these two little sets of beaming legs racing in towards the aquarium. And I get this call as I'm kind of tucking our passes back in. And the caller on the other end of the line was very, sounded like had a lot of urgency in the voice. Is this Erica Harris? Is this Erica Harris? You need to go to the nearest emergency room and avoid all public places. And for me, I was kind of dumbfounded because like I know enough as a sports chiropractor as to when to get somebody out of the office. They identified themselves as having been calling from the labs. And I was like literally standing in the most public of public places in Vancouver as we were speaking. And I'm like, yeah, no, like I'm fine. Like you've got the wrong girl. Like I actually just thought that they had mixed up my results with somebody else's. But lo and behold, devastatingly, they did not. And I was later diagnosed with what proved to be a very aggressive version of leukemia. I was admitted to hospital right away, within hours after that. And
So you
I,
just you just left the aquarium right away, right? Like you took it.
well, I kind of deleted that part. You would think that that's what I did, but in the aquarium, like reception is really terrible. And so as I took a few more steps, like I was wholeheartedly convincing them that they had the wrong girl. Like this is how disconnected I was from like myself, like kind of on autopilot, like going through the successes of life, climbing the ladder, like just go, 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 what was coming next. Never taking time to look inwards or self-reflect, always worried about everyone else, not myself. And like literally, I'm convinced, like I'm telling them on the phone, no, 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 like I'm the poster child for health and wellness. Like I'm super healthy. You've got the wrong girl, and then the connection like was lost. Like they were just gone. And that's what happens a lot in the aquarium. So literally I carried on with my day
Oh
thinking
wow.
I have the wrong person. Well, lo and behold, I go home later that night. I tuck my kids in. My husband comes home and I'm telling him about this experience. And he's like, wait, what? Like you didn't go in? And I'm like, no, 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 it's not for me. Like they literally had this mixed up. And then we picked up like this slew of messages on the home phone. I went in to see my family doctor the next morning and I kept trying to profess to her, no, 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 like this is just a glitch, like a complete mix up, a mistake. And she's like, no problem, Erica, like just zip downstairs and go do another lab. And I was like, yeah, sure. Like I was just so happy to clear it up. And had I even been worried, Joe, like if I even had the slightest level of apprehension about me being actually unwell, I would have brought my husband or somebody there for support. I totally flew in that morning on my own. Like I was so confident this was just a glitch. Anyhow, I went downstairs for that lab and came up and the exact same results reappeared. And that's when like it got really serious. I did a bone marrow biopsy very soon thereafter, and I was diagnosed with leukemia. It's acute myeloid leukemia. It proved to be a very aggressive version, really one that only old senior men are known to get.
Oh,
Typically, with leukemia, someone will get like a ton of white blood cells predominantly, but they're really dysfunctional, but their numbers are still really, really high. I just had like none whatsoever. And so at first, they kind of thought they were hopeful. I think that maybe I just had this really severe infection recently and it wiped out all of my immunity, but something was really off. And I kept saying, like, I really don't think I had been unwell, you know? Anyhow, very soon after I was diagnosed with leukemia, literally admitted to hospital within hours. And there's like nobody to help explain what cancer is to babies. You know, like you're doing this all on your own. Your whole world has been pulled out from underneath you. It's so overwhelming. It's so much.
what was
Any
your husband's reaction?
Yeah, like I think we were just stunned at the time again because it was just, like such an antithesis for the life that I had led. My kids' first food were like homemade spinach and like avocado. I would steam the spinach and like all of their baby foods were made from scratch. Like I've been obsessed about my nutrition and eating like organic, like top of the line, like whole, like not processed foods, like real foods, um, literally, like I hiked every mountain, soared down them all on my skis. I did everything right. Like this was so unforeseen. And so I think we were all just in this like complete state of shock. I remember telling my kids, like, gosh, like, but before I went to the hospital, I was like, I didn't want to use the word cancer, right? Because I knew they would have no context of it at their wee ages, but I knew I would crumble if I said that. And I certainly didn't want to do that at that time with them because I knew then that they would be worried. And so I remember saying, like, and it's ironic because of the name of your podcast. But I remember telling them we all have these fighter cells to fight colds and bugs. And mama's fighter cells just aren't really strong right now. So I have to go to the hospital where they have like the tools and the know-how to make mommy's fighters strong again. Because I thought that was like in a language that they could kind of understand, you know? And then my older son, who was 4, I was leaving for the hospital and he like shouts out in this like exuberant voice from like the top of this roundabout stairwell that we had. And he's shouting down, he's like, "Go fighters, go mama." And that like completely became my, I don't know, what I call my personal power statement that really helped me stay the course for many unimaginable indignities that were to come ahead. These kids just have a way of like saying it all, and that really helped me hold on and, stay pointed to my North Star and my goals every time I thought I didn't have the strength to continue. Um, but yeah, I was originally given an 80% chance of success in responding to the first round of chemotherapy, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like you're admitted to hospital for it. Also because with leukemia, all of your bloodlines are affected. So you have no, like, you don't have adequate red blood cells, you don't have adequate platelets, you can bleed out, like you don't clot properly. So you have to be admitted. Anyhow, after the first round of chemotherapy, 3 weeks later, they come in and they tell me after another bone marrow biopsy, those are brutal, by the way, that I was not in remission. And only 3 weeks after I was diagnosed, after not even having complained of feeling sick or unwell, they tell me, okay, this is really aggressive. We're going to need to do a round of salvage chemotherapy followed by a bone marrow transplant. And now like salvage chemotherapy, as soon as you hear it, you're like, wait,
Yeah,
what?
what
Like,
is that? Yeah.
what if that doesn't work, And of course, I inherently ask the question. It needs to be renamed because it inherently denotes like negativity. And anyhow, they said that would be the end of the line. And I was like, there's no way. Like literally, I was like planning a month-long holiday. This is 3 weeks in, and I'm told there's a potential for this to be the end of the line if this round doesn't work. And I was like, gosh, this is brutal. Like, and the treatment itself, like salvage chemotherapy followed by a bone marrow transplant, just sounded brutal. So I was like, show me somebody on the path who's like survived and actually thrived on the aftermath of this. And they rummaged through their records and they found me this like amazing woman named Mary who had come in to my hospital. And I was in septic shock on this day. Like it was a really hard day. And I swear she came in my hospital room. She was like an angel. Like I swear she lit up from behind. And she came like right up to my hospital bed. She grabbed a seat. We spoke for like the longest time, and she just said everything I needed to hold, like to hear, to hold on. And she just got it in a way that like no one else could understand it. You know, that power of connection is so huge. And she's like, I bet you feel like just a shell of yourself in here and that there's nothing left of you inside. And I was like, oh heavens, like that's exactly how I felt. Like, how did you take the words right out of my mouth? You know, it just made me cry because she just understood it, you know? Anyhow, she was leaving the hospital that day to go and meet her firstborn grandchild, who was being delivered at the time when we were meeting. And for me, that instantly like gave me this visualization of when I would be older, that I would be this fit little granny one day. No pressure to my future kid or my kids to have future grandbabies, but I just pictured myself as this fit little granny. It gave me a lot of hope, actually. And so continuing on through the salvage chemotherapy, I devastatingly, well, actually, I'll shift back because in this time, the team had been like really trying to find like a perfect bone marrow transplant match for me for a donor. My only brother, who's a surgeon back east, was not a match. And so they had held like awareness groups about trying to match donor matches. And a lot of people had registered to try to see if they could be a match for me. Lo and behold, my team like came racing in on July 30th, 2012, after like, you know, a lot of stressful weeks trying to find a perfect donor. And they were like, oh my gosh, Erica, we just found you like a perfect 10 out of 10 donor for your future transplant. And I was so excited. This day just gave me like so much hope that I would not only survive, but I really would thrive. I was just like alive with this news. Lo and behold, Joe, I only came to find out years later. Believe it or not, for all the hope he gave me, his last name is actually Hope, Hopbe. He's from Germany, believe it or not. Anyhow, super cool. But devastatingly, the very next day, so just after being extended this gift of life and me being on like literally cloud nine, the team comes racing back in the next day saying, shoot, we didn't expect this. Like, you actually didn't respond to this round of salvage chemotherapy, and you have to be in remission to get this bone marrow transplant. And you're now no longer eligible to get this bone marrow transplant. And I was just like,
It's a
what?
roller coaster. It's like, yeah.
Literally, literally. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, what are you telling me? And they're like, well, we have no more medical options for you. We're like, this is a 2-month terminal prognosis. I was denied all further medical care at that point, aside from palliative care. And like sounds came out of me that I didn't know existed beforehand, you know, that night, like just from the deepest parts of me, like, just like, what? Like, who's going to make Christmas as special as it needs to be for my babies? You know, who's going to make their birthdays as special? Who's going to cheer for them the loudest at soccer? Like, that's my job, you know? Like, what? Like, I couldn't compute. And anyhow, I fought to get out of the hospital. If I had 2 months to live, I was certainly not going to do it on the palliative floor. And I had a lot of living to do. And so I fought to get out of the hospital. Our first stop was to go down to Seattle, which has a leading leukemia institute called Fred Hutchinson Center.
Before you move on, I just want to ask because salvage chemo, what's the difference between regular chemo? Is it the same exact medicine? It's just another round?
It's like super, super aggressive. And so a lot of people don't qualify for it because they're not healthy enough. And so you have to meet a lot of like benchmark health standards to even be able to get this. But it's like the most aggressive chemo that you can possibly get. And I guess if that doesn't work for leukemia, there are no other treatment options. But I couldn't really take that line down. So we went for a second opinion to Fred Hutch. And devastatingly, they gave us the exact same opinion. They told us that we could enter into some trials. But that just didn't resonate with me because I didn't want to move my family down, cause chaos for my babies. And they said that the trials wouldn't work, but they wanted to use me in the name of science. You know, maybe my decision would have been different had because I'm all about science. Maybe my decisions would have been different if I didn't have kids. But it was like a firm no way. Like I had so much to do, you know? And anyhow, I definitely prepared for the worst. I acknowledged the power that this fire-breathing dragon of cancer had over me, and wrote my babies like a bunch of letters, for their future graduations, for future special days. I went through that whole process with tears streaming down my face. I, tried to put myself in a box so that way they would kind of know some of me and how much I loved them so fiercely. But it was like I didn't have enough time to do it all. I had 2 months and I wanted to spend all this quality time with them. So if they were sleeping, I was doing that. If they were awake, I was in my backyard and pursuing any and everything in the natural healthcare realm. I'd also have to go to the hospital um, every day to get blood transfusions just to stay alive for another day. But aside from that, I wasn't receiving any like chemotherapy or any medical care whatsoever aside from those transfusions. Or if I got an infection, like maybe some medications for the infections. But I also pursued any and everything in the natural healthcare realm. I had pretty much eaten like what a lot of people consider to be an anti-cancer diet before getting cancer. Um, and it was really interesting because when I was given this prognosis, like our story had gotten out in the media and people like held us in prayer groups, like strangers, complete strangers from all over the world. Literally, our story just got out. And they also sent us um, like contacts for leukemia from all around the world, like from Japan, from Israel, from Australia, like you name it. And resoundingly, without speaking to one another, they all said the same thing. Like, Erica, you need to eat like a lot more animal protein. Needs to swim, squawk, run, jump, fly with every single meal. And I was like, well, shoot, that's like the antithesis of a anti-cancer diet. But what did I have to lose at that point, in my view, right? Like I had already tried everything I thought was, quote unquote healthy. So their views were that I needed those protein building blocks to create the healthy blood cells that I needed.
So were you on like basically a vegetarian vegan diet, basically?
Before I wouldn't say I was vegetarian. I just didn't gravitate to a ton of meat. I'd have chicken every now and then, but like I wasn't vegetarian, but I certainly didn't like I would just gravitate more to like chickpeas and legumes and salads and fruit and
Hmm.
vegetables, like very plant-based, but not intentionally vegetarian, you know? But yeah, now they basically said I needed to eat something with animal protein every single meal. And this was like a hard adjustment for me, especially when I didn't feel the best, when my tummy was so weak. But I definitely adhered to their advice. What did I have to lose? I did a ton of green juicing. I did various supplements like vitamin C injections through the naturopathic clinic. I did like mushroom supplements like lion's mane, uh, reishi.
Hmm.
Yep. And I did a lot of like meditation. For me, that was huge. Like I learned to do transcendental meditation. That's what really got me off the autopilot of life and like really brought me back into the present moment. There's nothing like a terminal prognosis that's going to get you into like the now more than anything else on earth. Um,
How does transcendental meditation differ from meditation we all have heard about?
Yeah, sure. So it's basically like when you work with, I don't know, like a TM guru, let's say, there's probably a proper name for her, but whoever teaches this style of meditation will come and she came to our house and it's very individual. Like she gives you a word that's kind of meant for you that you do, and it's like top-notch secret. Like I can't tell you the word. I can't tell you anybody. But you basically just repeat that word anytime a thought comes into your mind. And so you're really just like have a clarity of your thoughts for about a 20-minute period when you sink into this process. And I kid you not, Joe, like I've tried other forms of meditation. Like I was always that girl in hot yoga. Like at the end of the hot yoga class, they're like, oh, okay, now like, go into your meditation groove. And I'm looking around, I'm like, it's time to go. Like we got to get out of here. But this meditation, oh my heavens, it really resonates with me. And I've practiced it so much that like I don't know, if something fluffs my feathers when I'm standing in Whole Foods lineup, like I can do this in the Whole Foods lineup. And it just takes me to a different space. Anyhow, she did tell me, when she was working with me, this guru, she was like, this isn't going to cure your cancer. And I was like, I hear you, but, she's like, it might just bring you some calm throughout this journey. I don't know. I think if anything I did, it was this practice of, just mindfulness and meditation and like all of my thoughts just completely transformed. Like, gosh, I started to see nature in such a different way. Like when I'm unwell or even now today, like I just go up and I take like the most close-up photos of flowers and like the waves rolling in. Like I just get so connected with nature. I don't know what else. Yeah, my thoughts just really changed. Like profound gratitude for the mundane, just for getting to cook a meal with my kids. Like everything about me, like my complete energy just shifted in this time. Anyhow, and in all honesty, I wasn't trying to get into remission. I didn't think it was possible. I had heard this from two different international institutions. I was literally just trying to stay healthy enough to extend that 2-month prognosis by another day. Maybe I could make it to Christmas even, like this is what my efforts were. I was trying to fuel myself, my mind, my body, my soul in a way that would make me feel my best in that next moment or in that next day. I was also trying to convince, because of that bone marrow transplant donor and all that hope that he brought me, had I not found out the day before, I would have never known. And so I kind of felt like I was given that information kind of from above, like call me crazy. I felt like it was my sign to hold on. And I was trying to, with the help of my brother, who's in the medical world, and my brother-in-law at the time was trying to help, we were trying to convince Vancouver General Hospital to do this trial that they were doing in Ottawa back east on patients who were receiving, in this study, they were receiving a bone marrow transplant without being in remission. You'd need a lot more like whole body radiation, a lot higher of a dose, and a whole bunch of other things. Realistically, like I have no clue how I could have even flown. I was so sick, like I don't know how I could have gotten on a flight. Like I literally needed transfusions just to stay alive, but that was what was giving me hope literally to do all of these natural healthcare measures at that time when I've heard this dire prognosis from two different international institutions. But by doing all of this, miraculously, somehow I attained this miraculous spontaneous remission. Um, and
And you said that you, because there is a big link, right, between cancer cells growing and stress. So a lot of your stress went away through meditation, I assume, at this point.
yes, yes. And like when you talk about that, that's so interesting because, when I'm having like heart-to-heart conversations with a lot of my close people, like a huge shift for me on this path in terms of like, I've always been like that happy girl, right? Oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Like very just upbeat, very jolly. But this path, and I was for the first like 6, maybe 7 weeks on this path. And then we had this day where we had to hire this new nanny. And all of a sudden, this nanny brings in my kids, and she's sitting in the corner of the room and my kids are on the bed. And all of a sudden, I was just struck like somebody hit me with a bat. Like I was struck so fast that I was like, what? Like it felt so surreal that this complete stranger had access to our family's most vulnerable and most intimate of moments. And she didn't even know my kids, right? Like she was this new person on the scene. And it just felt so raw and so wrong. And I remember when she took the kids that day, she was telling me about, they might stop on the way home and before dinner and yada, yada. And I wanted to be that one to take them home, to tuck them into bed and to make them a healthy dinner and to snuggle them goodnight. Like that was my job. And I watched her load in my babies that day into my vehicle. I could see from like my penthouse view above, and she was putting in my kids into the car, my car. And all of a sudden I panicked. I was like, shoot, like from the hospital, you have to go on like a small little highway strip. I was like, shoot, like, is she going to shoulder check? Is she going to buckle their seatbelts properly? Like, is she going to speed on the way home? Like, oh my gosh, like, does she realize what precious cargo she has in that car? And people assume I've had so much physical pain on this path, but I have not. That day, was the most physical pain I've ever experienced in my entire life. Like my heart drove out of my chest as I watched my car drive away with my babies. And I turned around from my window that day. People often praise me for being so positive on this path, but that's not the case. Like I've been very real about the hardships. And I turned around that day and I just like slunk to the floor like I was in a fetal position almost. And I just wept, Joe. And I wept and I wept for all the moments that had been so brutally ripped away from me, like that family trip, or I had to abruptly stop nursing my youngest who had been sick. I wasn't ready for that. He wasn't ready for that. I had to miss my oldest, his fifth birthday party that I had planned for ages. I had to let myself grieve, these moments and feel these losses. But not only did I let myself express that and feel it and process it and release it, but I also let myself, I don't know, go even further backwards to like, even though I've had a very good childhood, I've been very blessed. Like we all have hurts, right? From growing up or from other things like relationships or whatever. And I finally gave myself the safe space to feel all of it for the first time. And like I'm a firm believer that, when we just stuff down all those emotions, all those hard emotions that we face, like emotions serve us. Like when we negate the hard emotions, we also don't create the behavioral responses that those come to serve for us. And so when I was pushing all of those down, I wasn't letting myself process that. It's like energy in my view, like all those hard emotions are energy. They don't go anywhere if you're not processing them or being real about it. Um, but in turn, like in my view, it's like energy, like it changes into like physical health, mental health, right? It's like energy. And so for me, that release of finally allowing myself to cry, like I didn't stop crying for like 4 days. But in today's society, like you have to advocate for yourself to be able to do that because like the floor psychiatrist was in a heartbeat being like, "Oh, I heard you've been crying." Like are you trying to take steps that we don't know about? And I'm like, "Look, if I were trying to take steps, I would just unhook myself from all these medications, Like I just need the safe space to feel all of this and cry. You probably should have come to check in on me when I was hosting 60 people every day and on my exercise bike trying to like give people like drinks from the water fountain. Like that you should have checked on me because that's not exactly okay. But I think
Mhm.
like I don't know if there's one thing I don't know why I'm here today. If it's a gift from above, if it's um, waving magic crystals, if it's all the energy work I did, if it's my fierce yearning to get to be a mom, if it's the green juicing. But I don't know. I believe wholeheartedly that me finally being real about the hardships in life and letting myself have that safe space and almost advocating for myself that it's okay to be real, right? It's not okay. It's okay to not be okay sometimes. And I just needed to like really cry that out. Anyhow, I digress. But
You went into remission. Can you walk us through when the doctor told you that you were in remission?
yeah, sure. So I had a bone marrow. Okay, so take it back. I was still going in every day for these, or at least every other day to get blood transfusions. And they would then check your current blood status so they knew what to give you and how much to give you, if that makes sense. And so one day, they reported that I had now zero point zero 0.01 neutrophils or something like ridiculously low. But for a girl who had had zero neutrophils, which is a line of your white blood cells, for like weeks and weeks and weeks, and this is the big marker for leukemia, now I have a little bit. And I was like, shoot, I've got neutrophils. Like I'm like super excited, right? And then a couple days later, I go in. I still remember I was wearing, this is 2012 we're talking about. I was wearing like a hot pink Lululemon top. I had like Lululemon tights and like hot pink flip-flops. I'm feeling pretty strong. I'm feeling on my A game. I walk in. Now I have zero point 0.2 neutrophils and I'm talking to the nurse and I'm like, have you ever seen anyone look like this strong and succumb to this prognosis? And she's like, oh, Erica, I'm so sorry, and it was almost just like, oh, okay.
What? Yeah.
And then
Lie to me at least.
I know, lie to me.
Yeah.
And then my physician came in. And again, like I felt like I was up in an air balloon. I'm so happy. I'm like, look, neutrophils. And he's like, he sits down and he's like, Erica, like, I'm really so sorry, but like this prognosis, it's going to come true. It might just take like a few more weeks than we anticipated. And it was like somebody put a pin in that balloon. And I just fell so hard to the ground. But the next week, this physician was off. And this old British physician was responsible for my case that week. And he came into the daycare and I said, look, zero point 0.3. Like it just kept going up by little tiny bits, but it did keep going up and it was completely unexpected. And I remember advocating to this physician saying, and you have to be your own best advocate on this story, on this path of fighting anything. And I remember saying to him, look, zero point 0.3. And he's like, Erica, we didn't expect this. I'm going to go look at your chart for a while. And he came back about an hour later. And he was like the gentleman of gentlemen, you know. He used to say to me when I was upstairs in the hospital and like, the middle of summer, oh, it's a beautiful day out there. We're missing another gorgeous one, but you and I are in here together, and this is just wonderful. I always love our conversations. He always made you feel valued, and just yeah.
Plus, he
And
has that British accent, which I'm
yeah.
sure helps.
Yeah. Anyhow, he's like, Erica, look, like we didn't expect this, and we're gonna do a bone marrow biopsy to figure out what's going on. And so when I went into the hospital, don't quote me on it, but I think I had about like 26% leukemic cells. After the first round of chemotherapy, I think I had about 60 plus leukemic cells. When I was given my terminal prognosis after the salvage round of chemotherapy, which was only 7 weeks after I was diagnosed, I think I had about 80 to 90% leukemic cells. I was super sick. And so now when he does this follow-up bone marrow biopsy, when I'm getting a couple of these like brilliant little neutrophils, he checks and I'm at 3.5%. So somehow I went from, high 80s, 90s to 3.5%. Under 5% means you're actually in remission. And I was just like this came so unexpected. Like I'm literally there for daycare to get like blood transfusions. Oh my heavens, like again, now great sounds came out of me that I didn't know existed, and it was just this like miraculous day. And then wheels got really fast into motion. They reached out to my bone marrow donor who had tested like to be my match, and he was still willing to donate. And so miraculously, I was able to have this bone marrow transplant very soon
Oh,
after. You have to go through like another round of salvage chemotherapy. I had to do whole body radiation before receiving the bone marrow transplant, because they have to ablate like all of your own bone marrow before you receive this transplant. Anyhow, my blood type changed from O negative to A positive, believe it or
what?
not. That was like a really great score on that test. And then I did really well. I was back to hiking, with a few setbacks of like septic shock, but I was back to hiking like the Grouse Grind, which is like a really good hike here, just a short hour hike, but it's like really good cardio. And back to all my ascents and teaching my babies how to ski and Whistler and super fit again. But on my hikes, people started to pass me. And I just couldn't seem to get in enough air. And I wanted a t-shirt that said, I'm not trying to let you pass. Because they were always like, thanks for letting me pass. And I'm like, well, I'm not trying to let you pass. But I just couldn't seem to breathe well enough. And I mentioned it to my physicians, but they kind of dismissed it because they were like, oh, you're just so much more active than everyone after transplant. And Joe, I was just so grateful to be alive. I didn't care if I was hiking in the trees. So I decided to walk the flats. We have got beautiful seawall walks here in Vancouver, right along the ocean, and it's just like fabulous. So I was happily walking the flats and just so grateful to be alive. But within a few short months, the same shortness of breath caught up with me there. And they realized a bit too late that my new hardy immune system from this bone marrow transplant woke up, looked around, decided it didn't recognize my lungs, embarked on this fierce process of rejection, basically attacking my lungs like it would a cold or a flu. It's called the process of bronchiolitis obliterans, and it did a very good job. I had like holes in my lungs by the end of this. My only chance of survival, I was told, would be new lungs. Um, being gifted new lungs through a double lung transplant. Um, and believe it or not, I always say your worst day for me was July 31st, 2012, when I was told I had 2 months to live. Your worst day can turn into your best day because 3 years after that, to the day, was the day I was told new lungs were waiting for me. And I received a double lung transplant on August 1st, 2015.
How bad was it at that point before you got the transplant? Like, was it like
Oh
breathing
gosh.
through a straw? Like,
I had developed steroid-related cataracts because of the high dose steroids I was on. I couldn't see, I couldn't drive, I couldn't walk across my kitchen without losing capacity of all bodily functions and feeling
wow.
like I was going to pass out, even on full oxygen. I was about 80 pounds at the time. It was brutal. I didn't know if I was going to get this gift in time. So yet I'm trying to be normal mummy with my kids, do all these normal family adventures. Oh my gosh, it was such a hard time, such a hard time.
Did you, at this point, actually, you know what? You continue. Like, so you got the okay for the lung transplant.
Yeah, so I go in and I have this like crazy lung transplant where my lungs were removed. They didn't know if I'd survive because my lungs were so uh, so broken is not the word, but so damaged that when they took out the one lobe to replace it, they didn't know if this lobe, even with all the machines, could distribute enough oxygen to support my body. To be honest, I think I went somewhere then in that time, and I had this like, I don't know, quasi near death experience, if you want to call it, that was like incredibly powerful for me. Um, but yeah, it was like a really fragile time, I would say. I woke up and had all these crazy hallucinations. Um,
Like
I was,
what? What did you? What were
oh
you?
gosh, like we could have a whole show just on these hallucinations. But
Yeah.
I was convinced that my like kind-hearted surgeon, who like I swear he gives of his time by donating to less fortunate countries, like he is like the world's best. But no, like I was 100% certain that he was the head of this drug cartel, that like they'd be cutting up the drugs like close to me and I could hear it. And like the nurses were like, I don't know, the delivery shipment people, like they would deliver out to the other physicians on Broadway. Oh no, I had the whole thing down.
And you fully thought this was real life.
Yeah, to the point that I even said in the middle of the night to one of this tiny little nurse, her name is Sandra. I remember saying to Sandra, I was like, look, I'm not going to tell anybody. Like I don't want to know what's happening. But when your guys come in the night in the hoodies to pick up your shipments, like it gets a little bit drafty in here. So would you mind bringing me like a warm blankie so that I'm not as cold? And she's like, yeah, what? And I'm like, yeah, you know, when they come in the windows to pick it up, and she's like, you're on the 12th floor. Like, and I'm
No.
like, "No, I know they're coming in the windows." And then my husband, this is probably why we're divorced, but I'm kidding. But he would come in the next morning and I'm like, yeah, you see that patient over there? This is when I'd be like in the step down unit on the lung floor. We'd share like with five patients. So there's always a couple nurses in the room. Anyhow, I'm like, yeah, you see that patient over there? He's like, uh-huh. I'm like, not a patient in disguise. I listened to that patient and little tiny Sandra having naughty affiliations like all night long. And like, I'm like, but don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody.
But what did the nurse say? Like, is this common for someone in your position, like to
Okay, so
hallucinate?
so this is what I wish they had said because then you could have so much more fun with it,
Yeah.
right? Like Miss Piggy also sat on my bedside, like at the end of the rail, and she was having like the most hilarious, like comments about everybody that would come into the room. Like I can't describe her today, Joe, but like I could tell you everything. Like it was like a memory card had been pulled out of my mind of Miss Piggy from when I was 6. And oh yeah, these are hilarious, but I would have had way more fun with it had I known it was normal. I just thought I took a slippery slope off the deep end because I knew like as much as I'm sure it was real, I knew it was so far gone that now I just thought I was like really crazy,
Like you
right?
lost your mind.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, like I lost all my marbles from the lack of oxygen, from whatever. And so I didn't want anybody to know because I was like partially humiliated at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of funny because like flashback, like I remember definitely didn't tell anybody about the pseudo patient in disguise over here. And then I was readmitted to hospital maybe about 8 months later. And as I'm walking down the hall to get readmitted, that little nurse Sandra's like walking up and she goes, "Oh my gosh, Erica Harris, like you probably don't remember me." And I'm like, "Oh, I remember you."
Yeah. Oh, I'm not gonna forget you.
That was hilarious. Anyhow, yeah, I grew strong. And the really cool part of this story is I know like both of my donors. And like I said, I have hope-filled bone marrow that, fuels like my every passion and every pursuit. And believe it or not, my donor for my lungs, her name was Joy. And so I have these joy-filled lungs, and
You
I
have
stand
hope and joy.
I know. I stand on like every mountaintop. Like I still ski with my kids and I stand on every mountaintop and I swear I'm like sticking out my chest just to show Joy the whole world. And I swear I'm the luckiest girl on earth. It's been like really hard. There weren't enough supports in place for, the families of these young sick parents. Um, no one had reached out to my husband or my kids from like medical service wise, like psychology or counseling, et cetera. When I was given this terminal prognosis, nobody reached out to my babies. A lot more supports need to be in place. My husband chose to divorce 6 weeks after I was finally home from hospital. There need to be a lot more supports in place for this. This is what I advocate for now. Anyhow.
Did all this happen over a year span, like less than a year?
Oh no, like I was like a permanent resident in the hospital. I had
Oh,
more
okay.
complications like after the lung transplant a while later. Basically, it was about a 5-year span
Okay.
from start to finish. I would be in the hospital so much that, and I would try to get dressed every day. They would give me day passes so I could go pick up my kids most days from school and keep my sense of purpose, right? Like that was really important to me. But I would try to get dressed as many days as I could, and I'd be in the elevators, and like all the hospital staff would be like, "Oh my gosh, I see you here all the time. Like, what floor do you work on?" And I'm like, "No, like permanent resident, come visit, like whatever room." Like, no, my kids really grew up there. Like they say, adaptability is the number one success or factor that determines your success. And we definitely adapted
Yeah.
to that environment. Anyhow,
Would you say your number one motivator? I mean, I'm sure it was your kids at this time, right? Like
yeah, hands down, the child,
wanted to see them grow up, right? Like that was in the back of your mind.
100%. Like they were babies at the time, and I wanted them to know how much I fiercely loved and adored every tiny thing about them. You bet. And
Did
I
you
want
ever think, did it ever cross your mind to like give up? It's not worth it?
Ooh, that's when that personal power statement would come up. There were brutal, brutal, unimaginable indignities that I faced on this path. Like I'm just touching the surface here. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
sure.
yeah, brutal. And many moments where I didn't think I had the strength to continue on. But then without fail, like that go fighters go mama would always pop into my mind. And like sometimes, Joe, like I would be screaming it like in my mind, not to anybody. Nobody knew I was doing it, but I'd be like, go fighters, go mama, go fighters, go mama. Like almost like violently shouting it until it like refueled me with enough strength and perseverance to stay the course for another day, hour, sometimes even just a minute ahead before I need to do it all over again.
It's beautiful. So you've been in remission for 13 years, 2012?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, God
But
bless.
okay, so I get a lot of secondary cancers from the whole body radiation and the high dose immunosuppression that I'm on now. Like I've probably had about 60 skin cancers. But I'm followed very closely. The risk of the whole body radiation combined with these medications that I'm on for my lungs makes me like a huge candidate for skin cancers. They come where the sun doesn't even shine.
Mm.
So skin cancers, I've had like a secondary sarcoma that popped up from the whole body radiation. What else? My kidneys taken a hit from all of these medications. I lost my cycle at 35. What else? My bone density's taken a hit. I lost the vision completely in my right eye. I mean, I could go on and on, but
Oh, you're
I
blind in your right eye right now?
yeah, I try to focus on what I um, do, and I certainly live a rich and very, very incredibly bright life. And, I really find that challenges come to push you back to where you were always supposed to be. Sometimes we can veer off track from our course, our natural, like where we're supposed to go in life, from our North Star. And don't get me wrong, I loved being a sports chiropractor, loved every second about it. Owned my own practice, very successful, loved it. But now, I remember saying in grade 10 when my aunt, she was a high school teacher in Toronto, and we would go visit her. And she was like, "Oh, what do you want to do for university?" And I'm like, "Oh, I want to go into psychology." And she's like, "Oh, everybody wants to go in psychology. Nobody does anything with it." And I was like, "Oh, well, I better not go into psychology." And so I shifted gears and I did like gym. I did exercise science in university and loved it, at UBC. I came out west for that. And then did a degree in chiropractic school.
Mm.
And anyhow, loved it. But
Mhm.
yet now I find myself, people started to reach out to me to ask me to, for tools as to how I stayed the course through all of these feats and relentless and seemingly insurmountable feats. And people started to ask me to speak on stages. And so I've been coaching a lot of cancer patients, particularly, but really people that have had their worlds ripped out from underneath them by some pretty substantial health crisis. But I wanted more tools to be able to serve the parents or the spouses, I guess, of particularly of these young parents and the children, to give these families a better chance of staying together, particularly when a woman faces cancer. She has a 6 times higher chance of divorce compared to a married man who faces a similar prognosis. And so my goal is to like really connect the journey of the patient and the caregiver, to connect these, to support this children, and to keep these families strong together as they move through these journeys. So I've gone back to school to do a master's in counseling psychology. And I just absolutely love it. And I feel like this journey has kind of shifted me to come back to where I kind of always said I kind of wanted to be, right? Even back to grade 10. And don't get me wrong, I loved being a chiropractor, but it was very physically demanding too. And anyhow, I'm really loving this journey in psychology. And so I really feel like I work very closely too with um, my dear friend, Dr. Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate. I don't know if you know of his work.
Mm,
He's
not
written
yet.
When the Body Says No has been a powerful force on my path. He put my story in like the myth of normal. Anyhow, he's quite a well-known name out there, and I really resonate
Awesome.
with his views. Yeah.
Very cool. So what is a day in the life look like for you at this point?
Oh gosh, it varies. So I do share my kids with my ex. So it depends if I have my kids or if I'm footloose and fancy free on my own without my kiddos for that time. I do still spend a lot of time at the hospital. I'm passionately pursuing my master's. I love to give back in terms of doing various events for the community. I hosted a health and wellness summit. My son and I, actually, my son raised about $12,000 to host a family camp for these families with a young sick parent with cancer. That was super fun, just like a day camp experience to over at this beautiful camp, Camp Latona on Gambier Island here in beautiful British Columbia. That was a very powerful event.
Very cool.
Yeah, what does a day in the life look like? I don't know. I'm out on
You
the
said
water.
you podcast, right? Like how
Yes.
often do you do that?
Yeah, so I put the podcast on hold since I've gone back to school. But my podcast, it's called the Rise Today Inspirational Podcast. You can find it on my website at risetoday.com. Yeah, and it's really kind of similar to this in the sense of just really sharing stories of resilience and fortitude and rising above and really opening up the conversation about hardship and being really real about yeah, how hard certain days can be, right? Life is beautiful and life is also hard.
Yeah, I mean, so you have guests on it, or is it just
Yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I just forgot to mention before. So you said it's 6 times more likely for a guy to divorce a woman after she's gone through something like this.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, that's why we did this camp too, right? That's why I'm so passionate about connecting these couples because you have to imagine, right? When like, okay, so as a young chiropractor and a young mom, when I'm taken to hospital, roles really change. There's a shift in identity, right? Like intimacy factors are impacted. My husband had to take on different roles. Like it got this complete evolution. And so if these couples aren't being supported properly, right? Then they have this disconnect along the way and they're fighting the same journey, but they're not fighting necessarily from the same perspective. And if there's not like open chains of communication, then resentment can build on both sides. Anyhow, my husband chose to leave 6 weeks after. I always thought we'd have a chance to fix it, after I was well and healthy. Um, but he was pretty adamant that it was happening when it needed to happen.
But isn't the opposite true also? Like the roles will change it as well if the man's in has cancer and is in the hospital all the time, right? You also have to take on the fatherly role.
Yeah, I can't account for
Maybe it's guys are less empathetic or something. Is
I'm not gonna cast judgment.
yeah.
I just think men and women also deal with adversity very differently. And some cope um by being real and some cope maybe by it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. And that can also sometimes create some disconnect.
Yeah.
Uh
So
and
that's what you're trying to spread
intimacy,
awareness for, right? Right?
yeah, intimacy factors are a factor as well, right? Like that definitely changes. And without support, like these couples are really sometimes facing some like, especially the one who gets sick, some shame, right? About shoot, like, I've lost my cycle. Like you lose a bit of your femininity, right? There's no advocacy, hey, you should go on some hormones right away. Like you've just survived all this. There's no talk about this, right? And so it's really quite a silenced conversation, I would say. So Yeah.
Do you think whenever a family member is diagnosed with something like this, there should be some sort of therapy offered or family therapy, something like that?
100%. That's what I'm advocating for. So the Health and Happiness Summit was entirely to give back money to the hospital so that they can start a program like a family therapy program in the hospital itself for people that are admitted or BC cancer, et cetera. There's starting to be more things with BC cancer, but it's still not at the point where it needs to be. Excuse me, this family program that we did, this family day camp was just a couple weeks ago. And like we had like grown men crying at this event. And they were like, gosh, we had no clue how much we needed this until we were here. Like, thank you for hosting this. It's really just because there's so much that you go through. You're trying to take care of the kids, right? There's no room for your relationship, unless you're being very much an advocate for it. And when you're trying to survive, that falls short. It's really unfortunate, but there needs to be more advocacy for these young couples to support their relationship. And it serves the children to do so.
Yeah, I'm all for it. So, how can people help the cause? What do they do? They go to your website?
That's nice. So my son spearheaded this go. Yeah, you can go to the website. He initiated this GoFundMe for the Rise Family Camp. His name is Hudson Harris. He's graduating high school this year. He really took on a big mission. He raised $12,000, and we still have it open because we're going to launch this again next year. So people can go there and donate if they like. I would really appreciate it. All funds go to supporting these families. And the cost of all of the expenses there. So we served hearty meals. We had free counseling sessions there. We had a ton of giveaways where we gave the kids like free week-long soccer camp packages for the summer. Soccer and keeping my kids in sport was like a really saving grace for my kids' mental health. They both thrive despite all that they've been through. What else did we do?
Very
They got
cool.
to do like flying squirrel archery. We took this boat ride over. We were looking for orcas on the way. Like it was a really beautiful day.
I
So,
gotta ask what flying squirrel archery is.
okay, so it's like super cool. Like you're harnessed in on one side, then the rope goes like way up in some tree. I don't really know, comes way down, and like, I don't know, five big dudes on the other side, like all for participants, will like run with this side. So you literally fly like a squirrel, like up high on the tree on this side. Anyhow, it was a super fun day. All super accessible too for people with maybe disabilities or other things, just so they can sit back, right? If they're feeling unwell, they can sit back, have this family event, everything's cooked, they can watch their kids like frolic and play and have these beautiful moments, and the spouses can connect with others and the kids can connect with others that get the journey.
So cool, Erica. Very cool. Thank you so much. We're coming up to the end here. We always like to ask though, what is something you would have told your 35-year-old self? You just got diagnosed with this, some information that might have helped you through it a little bit more, something you learned, and when you look back on and reflect that you wish you knew back then.
Yeah, like really like listen to your body. Like when the body, like my body was screaming at me for years before this set in. I had had like an eyelid rash. Like who gets an eyelid rash? Like it was so bizarre. I had this really weird eyelid rash for about a year before I was diagnosed. I sought out dermatology. I sought out naturopathic physicians. They're like, oh, I guess you've just had this new food allergy, but I wasn't really eating anything new. I was super tired. Yes, I was getting these night sweats, but ding, 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 it sounds like a red flag for cancer. But I'd had these night sweats in my early 20s, and they attributed it to hormonal changes from exercising so much. And so I just assumed it was like hormonal changes with nursing, that I was still nursing at this age. Um,
Mm.
the night sweats really seemed to be timed with my cycle too, so I wasn't super concerned by it. I was super tired though. Like my kiddo was like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he's like, Mommy, why do your eyes always look so tired? And I felt like it, like I just felt exhausted, but I also assumed all young moms were that tired.
And they
But
probably are.
I would dismiss my symptoms, right? And to prioritize everybody else. But like they say on the airplane, like you have to put your own mask on first before you help anybody else. Because I silenced all the screams when my body was trying to tell me to wake up, right? And
Yeah.
go inwards, pay attention to me. I think I really needed to be shackled. I was so stuck on this autopilot. What's coming next of my success? Like, owning my own successful practice was never enough. I was like, what's coming next? Right. I had to really go back and like identify, why was that a coping mechanism that I needed to prove my worth so many times over through overachieving, you know? And why was I doing so at the own cost of my body, right? Um,
Is
but
this a
yeah,
realization you came to because of meditation? Like thought?
oh, the whole process. I think I needed to be shackled. Like I've been handcuffed to hospital beds at times, and only because I like unconsciously pull out tubes. Um, but I think I needed to be shackled to this hospital bed with these four white walls around me to slow down enough to hear the lessons and to learn the wisdom of pain. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you for sharing.
And it was really nice to meet you.
Yes, same here. Everyone else, thank you again for listening to another Fighter Heart podcast. We will see you again next week.